All right, thanks for joining us. Fly Tying Tuesday. Last week we got a ton of requests for this fly. So we're going to be spinning up a foam wing emerger today. We're going to be tying it in our favorite color, which is brown, and our favorite size, which is a size 24 for those picky tailwater trout. On the vise, we have a Tiemco 2488. This is the hook we use for almost every single midge or Baetis nymph that we use. Great hook, nice and strong. We really only tie on Tiemco. Thread-wise, we're going to be using Semperfly Nano 18-aught in brown. This stuff is as thin as it gets. It lays very flat. It's also extremely strong. You can even use elk hair patterns with this thread. It's so strong. So we'll go ahead and tie this in right behind the eye. And we'll cut it off nice and close. We're going to just take this down to the hook bend, leaving a nice, smooth, even underbody here. Next thing we're doing here is we're tying in our tail. For that, we're going to be using mottled brown India hen. We use this all the time on Baetis patterns for the tail. Super realistic, so we're just going to pull a piece out. You'll see all this fluff and these crappy feathers at the bottom, so we're just going to pull all that off. So we're just left with the good stuff, just like this. Now what we're going to do here is we're just going to get a small clump of these and pull them to the side, making sure that they're nice and even. We want these tips to be perfectly aligned. We're going to pull this off. And the length we're looking for here is about a hook gap, pretty short tail. Now the way that we're going to tie this in is we're going to start it on the near side of the bend, take a loose wrap, and capture it. And why we're doing that and starting it on the near side of the bend is we're anticipating it rolling over so that it's laying right on top of the hook bend like we want it. Now this is a little bit longer than I like, so I'm just going to pull this back a little bit. Let's see. That's about how I like it. And now we're going to wrap back over the rest of this feather so that we have a nice smooth underbody. It's nice and even. There's not any clumps at that tail tie-in point or anything like that. We'll just take it back to the hook point and then cut it nice and close. Next thing we're doing is dubbing this. We're using Superfine, which is absolutely crucial. There's no other dubbing you can use on this fly, or else it's going to be too bulky, which is how 95% of them are tied. They're too bulky and they don't get eaten. It's an extremely sparse and slim profile to this fly. So we're going to take our thread back down to just before that tie-in point. And we are going to coat this with such a small amount of dubbing that you will barely be able to see it on your thread. All right, so now we're going to dub this. Just one wrap right in front of the next. And get a little bit more. It's always better to start with less than more. You can't really take this stuff off once you've tied it in. Once again, a really small, sparse dubbing noodle. We're going to take this right up to the bend, and I'm just evening it out a little bit here. Next thing we're doing is we're tying our wing. This is going to be 1 millimeter white foam, as the name of the pattern implies. We're cutting this to be about a hook gap in width. We're going to give our thread a little clockwise spin here, not a lot, just to tighten it up some. Important note here is making sure that when you tie this in, it's not covering up your eye. It's an easy mistake to make. So give yourself some room. And then you can cover up that foam where you tied it in. Now we're gonna dub the thorax. Once again, extremely small amount. We've already built up a bit of a thorax with that foam where we tied it in, so we don't need to use much foam. I like to take a first 2 wraps, first 2 or 3 behind it, so there's not a big dubbing gap in the middle where that tie-in point was. And then I come forward, and I'm gonna grab just the absolute tiniest amount. I need a tiny, tiny bit more. Now we're gonna whip finish, building up just a very small thread head here. 5 or 6 turns should be enough. Making sure we're not covering up the eye. Pull it nice and tight, make sure it's popped in, make sure that whip finish is good and secured. Cut this close. Last thing to do here is cut this foam. So we're gonna pull it a little bit. And you can see it's a pretty small amount of foam, but it is enough to get it mid-column or up near the film. And that's all there is to it. Really simple pattern. Doesn't mean it's easy to tie well. As we said, most people make it way too bulky. Spin some up, work on tying in that tail and getting it to lay flat on the top of the hook, on tying in that foam, on keeping a slim underbody and a really lightly dubbed body. We guarantee you'll have some success on your local Tailwater. Give us a shout if you have any questions. And thanks for joining us. All right.